Today we're going to be talking about international trade. So basically, we're going to be looking at when do two countries trade, when do two people trade, and why do they trade? Because of maybe it's going to benefit them, or maybe they can get more things. So let's look at what's happening here. We need to establish the difference between an absolute advantage and a comparative advantage. An absolute advantage is when one country has fewer resources to produce a good compared to another country, or when a country is more productive compared to another country. Basically, what this one says is like who can make more of something. So, for instance, if we're going to compare United States versus Panama, United States is much larger, so they can produce more corn than Panama can, just because of land size. So the United States would have an absolute advantage in corn over Panama for, just having more resources. So absolute advantage is basically who can make more. The key thing here is the absolute. Who can absolutely make more. The other one is going to be the comparative advantage. And a comparative advantage is when a country can produce a good at a lower cost in terms of other goods. So this is who can make it cheaper. So comparative, if you're looking at two different countries and you're trying to figure out who can make coffee cheaper, who can make oil cheaper, those things, that's what we're talking about. Who can make it cheaper. Now, when I say make it cheaper, what I'm really trying to say is that who does it at a lower opportunity cost? So by you making apples, you're not making bananas. If you make one apple, how many bananas are you giving up? That's what we're looking at in terms of opportunity cost, is who's giving up less bananas in order to make apples. So let's take a look at this. Let's look at two different countries, and these are their production possibility frontiers, how much they're possibly able to do. Now, the same thing can go with two people. You could have Alan and Ben, okay, and they could have their production of sandwiches and completing homework assignments, okay? Same idea. So whether we're talking about countries or people, the idea is the same. So we have this graph for the PPFs to really show you how much they're able to make. The best course of action here is you're going to take this information and you're going to put it on this chart right here. So basically, how many oil can Saudi Arabia do? So we go to oil, we go to Saudi Arabia, and they can do 100 oil. Like that's the most amount of oil they can do. What's the most amount of corn they can do? Looks like 25. Okay. For the United States, we're going to go with 50 and 100. So 50 oil and 100 corn. So looking at this, who has the absolute advantage in oil? So when we're looking at oil, okay, who can absolutely make more? Saudi Arabia, because they can make 100. Who has the absolute advantage in corn? The United States. Okay, so that's how we find absolute advantage. Who can make more? So for the absolute advantage in oil, that's going to be Saudi Arabia. Who has the absolute advantage in corn? That's going to be the United States. Now, the tricky part is finding the comparative advantage. And so to do this, you need to find the opportunity cost of making one oil. When you make one oil, how much does that cost you? So what we're going to do here is you basically are trying to find a proportion. So basically, Saudi Arabia can do 100 oil and 25 corn. If they did one oil, how many corn could they do? It's a proportion. Okay. So if you know this, this is the bat and ball method, the butterfly method, right? So this would be 100 times x, which is equal to 25. You'll do divided by 100. So x equals 25 over 100. And if you did this in your calculator, you should get 0.25. So for one oil for Saudi Arabia, it costs them 0.25 corn. The other way we can do this is how I do it. I want to know the opportunity cost of one oil. Right now, the United States has 50 oil. And all I got to do here to turn a 50 into a 1 is to divide it by 50. Because if I did 50 divided by 50, that's equal to 1. And in math, you have to make sure you do it to both sides. So we do 100 divided by 50, and that'll equal 2. So for one oil, that equals 2 corn. Okay. So I gave you 2 different methods. Let's do the same thing for the other side. Same process, but now we're trying to find the opportunity cost of 1 corn. So for Saudi Arabia, they can either do 100 oil or 25 corn, and we want the opportunity cost of 1 corn. If you don't remember proportions, remember all you do is you have oil on top, corn on bottom, and all you're doing is putting out what you want. They can do 100 oil or 25 corn. If you had 1 corn, how many oil can you do? So you're gonna bat and ball here. Oh, I'm sorry. You're going to bat and ball here to where you get 100 equals 25x. You divide by 25. So x should equal 4. So the opportunity cost of 1 corn is 4 oil. That is the bat and ball method or the butterfly method. You can also go my method. If I want 1 corn, and I'm looking at the United States, that I have 100 corn. So to turn this into a 1, I just need to divide by 100, because 100 divided by 100 is equal to 1. And because this is math, we need to do it to both sides. So I'll do 50 divided by 100, and that'll equal 1/2. So that'll equal 0.5 oil. So that's how we find the opportunity cost of making oil and making corn. Now, we need to figure out, well, who can make oil cheaper? So if we're looking at oil, who can make oil cheaper? So think of the corn as a dollar amount. And if that's the case, Saudi Arabia is the one that has the comparative advantage in oil, because they can make it cheaper. If we were looking at corn, obviously the United States can make it cheaper, because they can make corn, like 1 corn, it costs them 0.5 oil. But if Saudi Arabia were to make 1 corn, it would cost them 4 oil. If that's confusing, let me change it up. For the United States to make 1 corn, it costs them 50 cents. For the Saudi Arabia to make 1 corn, it costs them $4. So obviously the United States can make corn cheaper. So that's what the comparative advantage is looking at, is who can make it cheaper. So for oil, that's going to be Saudi Arabia, and for corn, that's going to be United States. And the reason they have the comparative advantage is because they have the lower opportunity cost. Okay. So, since Saudi Arabia gives up the least amount in terms of corn to produce oil, right? They gave up less corn, 0.25, to make oil. They have the comparative advantage in oil. The United States gives up the least in terms of oil. to produce a bushel of corn. They only give up 0.5 oil, and Saudi Arabia gives up 4 oil. So the United States gives up less. So the United States has the comparative advantage in corn. So what's happening here is that because you can make it cheaper, that's the one you make, that's the one you sell. So Saudi Arabia will sell oil, and then they will get corn, and they will get corn from the United States because the United States will sell corn and get oil. All right. In the next video, we need to determine what is a good price to basically sell at. Once we know who's selling what, how much do we sell it for? I'll see you there.